Karibuni, karibuni, karibuni. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Asanteni kwa kuwa nasi. Welcome and thank you for being with us today. The name is Nduko. Jina langu ni Nduko. My name is Nduko. I'm the host on Kumbukeni, and I'm excited about today's conversation. I'm excited to be joined by my brother. He's going to introduce himself in a minute. This is a program I have, I wouldn't say observed, but I have heard to hear about on a few occasions, and I'm very impressed by what they do. And this is a moment for us to learn that we can actually do this work, that we don't have to wait, and that it's possible to return to who we are, even when we're away from the motherland. So, Brother Kenyatta, please introduce yourself. Asante.
Yes, peace and blessings, family. Once again, my name is Brother Kenyatta. Actually, a Jammu Kalfani Kenyatta, but everybody knows me as Brother Kenyatta. And I am the executive director of the S.T.E.P Rites of Passage and Manhood Development Organization, based here in Newark, New Jersey, and we've been operating for approximately 26 years, a little bit over 26 years. And our main purpose is to elevate and to uplift and to develop strong, conscious young black men. That's our purpose. Nothing other than that. We want strong, conscious young black men, and of course, leaders that can be, fathers and big brothers and uncles, to once again bring about that village mindset, and particularly where the men are more involved with the process. Credible men, strong men, masculine men who know the necessity of raising strong young black men.
So, we're going to start with when you first founded the program. What inspired you, or what? Because sometimes it's not inspiration, right? It's sometimes you notice a need in the community, and that
Hmm.
we can call that inspires you. But that need for healing in the community sometimes is what inspired us. When did you start? What inspired you? Who started it? How did you start? And what do you do? How does your program look like? What age do you recruit between
Right.
what ages? Yes.
Okay. I'll try to answer all your questions. I initially came to the Newark area uh, in the early '90s. Must have been around '93, um, and there was a lot of gang activity. There was a lot of shootings. And after a few years of interacting with different organizations and different youth groups, I was volunteering at different programs, working at different programs, and I noticed that there was very little culture. There was a very little exposure to history and culture. Everything was about sports. Everything was about, um, just the basics. Helping academically and things of that nature, which is all good. But at the same time, the culture wasn't there. And in the beginning of 2000, there was about 50 gang-related shootings in Newark within a 4-month period, between a 4 and a 5 month period. Um, Young men were dropping like flies. And at the time, I used to work out at the Newark YMCA, and a group of brothers who were regulars there, every day the conversation would ensue about another young black man getting killed. But it was a very casual conversation after a while. It got to the point that it was pretty much accepted as this is the way it is in the street. And most of them weren't experiencing anything personally, not their children. So therefore, they just talked about it in a very casual way. And that started to bother me. It started to bother me because, first of all, I was feeling this all the time, and because I was involved with other youth groups, and I was involved in the community, going to a lot of the meetings and a lot of the conferences in reference to stopping the violence. So I was seeing a lot of this firsthand, but at the same time, I didn't feel as though there were comprehensive, structured, organized, and cultural programs and activities that would try to address these issues before they actually develop into what they were developing in at that level. And so, because I looked at everything as proactive, and so I challenged these brothers. I challenged them on the spot one day inside of the gym, and I told them, I said, "Look, what are we going to do about it?" And As a result of that, the conversation changed. And then gradually, five of those brothers, or four, including myself, sat down, and this organization was structured, put in place, and that's how we started. Uh, Everybody had different views, everybody had different perspectives, and everybody had different motivations. So it didn't take long before I was by myself. Uh, and I'm talking about maybe 6, 7 months. I was by myself. But at that time, because of the need was so great that we had approximately 30 children that had came in. So now I'm by myself with 30 children, doing everything from curriculums to interacting with their families to counseling to disciplinary to all of these things. So it became my life. It literally became my life at that point. Many times I was told that I need to give it up and that, this is something that you can't continue. You're not getting the type of support, you're not getting the type of funding. Uh, but the necessity was so great, the need was just insurmountable. And I, at that point in my life, was sleeping, eating, dreaming uh, about elevating and somehow developing leaders in our community for our people. Because I know and understand that it's not just about what the adults say, that we have to create positive, conscious young men that can also talk to their peers, elevate their peers, educate their peers, that peer to peer education. And so that means we have to develop them. We have to develop them because what was happening in our community was not working. And so I continued. And so now it's 26 years. And so we were blessed within maybe 7 years in, we started to have brothers that seen what was going on and that decided to come on board and assist. And so since then, we've had 5 or 6 different brothers. Uh, some are still with us, and others have come, and some have came through the program that now uh, volunteer and work as staff members. So we've been able to generate that which we need in order to keep the program going and in order to make it more successful. And so that's kind of how we started. And over the years, first of all, or second, let me just say that I'm not a scholar, because a lot of times people may look at organizations that's been functioning as long as we have and say, okay, the brother's a scholar, you know. A lot of times we think we must be a scholar in order to
Exactly.
do something in a particular area. Um, I'm scholarly. I'm a person who reads a lot. I'm a person who studies a lot. So whatever I decide to get into, I study it. And so that's what I did when it came to rites of passage. We were truly blessed to have so many strong brothers and sisters who understood our culture and the necessity of rites of passage in our culture. And so, you know, authors like Dr. Jiranja Kunjufu, Amos Wilson, um, Dr. Bennett, Dr. John Henry Clark, um, so many that we pulled from in order to help structure ourselves, in order to help create curriculums, very powerful curriculums, to teach our young men not only about their history and their culture, but also being very realistic about it in terms of what their reality is. We also show them how that ties into their contemporary reality, you know, because sometimes, even as African-centered people, we'll get lost in the history or lost in what we consider the culture to be as it relates to the history. And we never really help them understand how it ties into their present or how it translates into their future. And if that connection is not made, then they tend to reject it, you know, because especially in this highly technological society where they see everybody blinging and carrying the bag, and so our young men have this desire to be acknowledged, the desire to be recognized. And of course, what better way to help them fulfill that desire than to show them our history and our culture and the greatness of who we are, and then also show them how they can apply that right now, today. You know, the beauty of being a young educator, which we have in our organization. I think you may have met Brother Natumbo before. He's a student that came through our program at a very young age, him and his two brothers, and now he's an instructor. He's still young, but they listen to him because they can identify with him as being a young man, and they look up to him because he is a young man with knowledge and understanding, and also concern for their well-being. And so we we our goal, one of our goals, is that intergenerational transfer of information and knowledge that will make sure that even when we're gone, you know, because we ain't got but so much time. So when we're gone, we're gone. And yes, they can pour libation for us, but at the same time, we need brothers and sisters that can carry on the work, that can make sure that the next generations, because that's what it's about. It's about the ones coming behind us and making sure that they have the foundation that's necessary in order to move forward. Um, so yes, definitely.
Thank you so much. For those who, and we'll get into that history that brought the need, right? The shootings in Newark, the crime, the criminalization of blackness, and then blackness accepting it as who they are because of how much it is stressed upon them, and their daily life just reminds them of that, and therefore subconsciously they own that criminalization and they start um, acting towards each other with it. So we'll get into that. But for anyone who's looking to start something like this, how do you run it? How do you manage it? Because you need lights on, you need the room to have heat in the winter. You need, like you said, some of the kids, all of them, if not some of them, if not all of them, want programs now to be related to showing success in career, right? It's going to give them a chance to get in the career world and get good jobs and all that. So how do you run your program, and what are the challenges, and how have you managed those challenges?
It's a continuous challenge. It's something that it's like when one decides to be a member of the struggle for the liberation of our people. Once you make that decision, unless you're just making it off the top of your head, uh, which means that as soon as something happens, you're out. But if you truly make that decision and you truly believe in the liberation of our people, then you know that there's going to be adversity, that there's going to be challenges, and that it's going to be a fight. It's just how it is. And that's what the struggle is. And so, ever since we started this program, that's what it's been. It has never stopped. So, in order for a person to engage in this type of activity, because first of all, African centered education, African centered rites of passage, which is an extension of that education, is not a popular thing. It's not the go to. Our children, our parents, our
Yeah.
community, and we know this is all around the world. They go towards that which they think going to make them rich and famous. They go towards sports. Everybody wants to be a rapper. 95% of the children that come into our program, and we ask that question, that's their first response. Sports, rapper, you know, something that they've been seeing in front of them and that looks like it got it going on. So as a result of that, you come to them with the culture and the benefit of the culture. That's pushed way back on the list in terms of priority. And that's the same way it is inside the school systems. Because in the school system, the few that do talk about culture in any type of significant way look at it as something on the fringes, not on the main plate. And so as a result of that, the children view it in that context also. The parents view it in that context also. Because, we're not thinking with our true conscious African mind. And so as a result of that, um, we find ourselves in this situation where we have to struggle. It would be beautiful if you could start a program like this and know that it's for the best interest of the community. So therefore, you will have community support. But that's not necessarily how it's going to be unless you find yourself inside of an exclusive community, you know, that will, cater to that type of thinking. But in general, you're not going to get as much support as you should from the community. So therefore, you do have to be strategical, and you do have to have fundraisers. You do have to have different types of programs and activities where you can try to generate the necessary funds. You do have to have donors, people who are of like mind and spirit, people who can identify with the benefit of your program, the benefit of what you do, and that's willing, to give resources, to willing to give time, you know, because volunteership is also very important, you know, and that's at whatever capacity, because we have several different things that we do. Everybody might not be an instructor, but they can be security, or they can be a monitor, or they can be, an African drum teacher, you know. So we have, young people who may not have the knowledge that we have, but yet they come in and they teach African drumming because they just happen to be from Gambia, you know, and so they was raised up on drumming, and so whatever abilities you have, that's that African-centered village communal way. You try to support in whatever you can. So just know that when you think about this type of program, that it's no quick fix. And then on top of that, being that that reality exists, the support you get from your local government, or the support you get from foundations, or the support you get from wherever, is also going to reflect that in some ways. Now, sometimes, you're able to, get lucky and you find someone or some organization or some group that says that's valuable. Or I like how the children come out, you know, and I'm not paying that much attention to what they're teaching them, but I see that they're respectful because there's many studies that show that if in fact a child, especially from a young age, is exposed to their culture, exposed to their history, knowledge of self, that they do better academically, that they do better behaviorally. They violence is almost unheard of. Um, Lack of drug use, they're not into drug use and adolescent fatherhood or motherhood. Exposing them to their culture gives them purpose, and that's something that we have to get across somehow to our people. You know, I mean, the system is a system, but our people, we have to get to that point that they understand that once you expose your child to culture, and if the school doesn't do that, then it's, you got to put them inside programs and activities, especially if you're saying it starts at home, but a lot of time that's not going to happen. I mean, we just have to be honest with ourselves, because a lot of times we say that, well, the parents should do this, the father should do that. Yeah, they should. But in many cases, it's not going to happen because they're out here working two jobs and trying to survive in this capitalistic reality, and them having any type of real, truly comprehensive, you know. And it's not always a big family that could come together, Some women are out here doing it by themselves. Some men are out here doing it by themselves. And so, and then have to deal with all the other stresses and everything that's going on. So the reality is that we're communal people. And so rites of passage, uh, youth organizations, um, these type of entities have a place in the village, institution that's able to assist the parent, assist, the family, so that they can be the best that they can be. Because that's the only way that we have to be realistic. That's the only way that we're going to be able to develop a new set of leaders, a new set of men, husbands, fathers that could actually help us change the trajectory of this thing. You know, we can't think about just philosophy, how things should be. You know, we have to be very serious about our reality, and that's one of the things that Dr. Amos Wilson talks about. That's why we love brother Dr. Amos Wilson, because he's a scholar, but at the same time he's very down to earth and realistic about his approaches to dealing with the upliftment of our people and our youth. And so reading his material helped to put things in context when it came to education, because we got this twisted view of what education is. But both Amos Wilson and also Dr. Naim Akbar, talked about the first syllable in education, which is EDUC. In other words, educe. And If you put the E on it, then it's the full word. But the root word is educe, which is EDUC. E. Take the E off and you look it up and you see that it's to pull out of you, not to put into you.
Extract.
Yes, yes. And so when we approach the development of our children from that perspective, the development of our community from that perspective, see, that's an African centered view because within us, we have that spiritual presence, we have that consciousness, we have that ability to analyze. That's snuffed out at a very young age inside of this type of society because they indoctrinate us. Everything they put in, they put in. You must know this, you must regurgitate this, you must take standardized tests to determine your intelligence and tell me whether or not Columbus discovered America. You know? And so our children memorize that and then they regurgitate it. And next thing you know, if they have blessed to become teachers, they teach it also. And so we must break that cycle. And one of the ways we're going to do it is that we teach our children what we know that's applicable to them. So again, Amos Wilson, he emphasized that the purpose of culture, or excuse me, the purpose of education is to develop the child in a way that deals with their reality, that help them deal with the things that they need to do to survive. And that if it's not applicable to their survival or that which is the best interest of our people, then it's faulty. It's actually indoctrination, it's not education. And that's exactly what so many of our children are going through. And therefore, we find ourselves in a situation where, yes, we have to develop these types of programs in order to make it happen. I hope I didn't go off into a tangent too much and not
No,
answer your
no, no,
question.
no, no, no. Look at my face will tell you I am very
Yes,
not. I cannot play poker, and thank goodness for that because poker is one of the harms of
yes,
society. But yeah, I will not be able to hide how I feel. So if you doubt, look at my face. You will see that
no
we are
problem. No
engaged.
problem.
And in the chat, they're saying grateful for your broadcast. It's
Thank
a
you. Thank you.
never so grateful to be a dropout. One of our audience members is saying. So I believe I mentioned before black criminalization of blackness, right? And we have the school to prison pipeline. And you can break it down for people who don't know what that is.
Yes,
And I am currently a teaching assistant, a paraprofessional, a substitute in all those capacities in the East Orange School District I've been in. I've been to the Natley School District. I've been to the Elizabeth School District. It is sad what I am witnessing. So, and when I happen to be someone who is committed in serving our people, right? And I always put my best foot forward. And because of that is why I have lost jobs in those spaces. So I get assignments, and because I'm good at what I do, and
yes.
because I'm actually teaching the children, I lose the position. I'll give you a good example before I ask my question. This week, I had an assignment in East Orange, and I was going to be the ESL substitute, so teaching English to students. And so I had two classes, the main class that I had in the morning, and then another class came in before lunch, and they were coming in the afternoon after lunch. During the first class, we had a little disturbances because, as you know, because of how our children are treated, and they feel a need to get attention because they're getting the wrong attention, so they act up. We have embodied this criminalization, right? So there was some incidents of acting up. I corrected the incidents. There was a situation where the children thought a boy had bullied another. I called the two boys to the side, got the other children to do silent reading while I talked to the other boys, the two boys to the side. And it came to be found out that the boy who claimed to have been bullied, or who didn't say anything while the children were saying in the classroom, he bullied him, and we have to go report because we're supposed to report anytime we think there's bullying, had said nothing. Come to find out, he's the first one who threw the insult to this young boy. This little boy is a black boy, tiny, skinny. So you can imagine what's going on there. I'm going to
Hmm.
describe him without saying what's going on.
Right.
The other boy is a black boy as well, huge and confident. So I sat them down and found out that the other one had said something. And so he was defending himself, essentially, using the wrong words, but defending himself. And so I said to the whole classroom, children, no one is going to go tell anyone that there was any bullying, because there was no bullying. This is what happened. And I asked the young man to explain what he did so that he was called a name. And he explained. And I said, you sat there and let the whole classroom talk about bullying happened, and they were going to report your friend, knowing how serious the offense is, and you didn't say anything. You cannot do that as a classroom. We cannot do that anymore. So basically, I explained the situation and was done with that, right? And we moved on to studying. And one of the girls, you can see the kids slowly drawing to me. By this time, I've taught them what my name means. They can't call me Miss M, because this is happening in schools. They have to call me Miss Mulumba. One of the children was called Abdul Rahim. I said, if I can say Abdul Rahim, my dear child, you have to say Mulumba. You're not going to call me Miss M. So I'm doing all that before that, right? And so one of the girls is excited. She comes to me and says, she shows me an Ida B. Wells book that she's reading. And you know me, Kenyatta, you've talked to me a few times, so you know my reaction when I get that.
Definitely.
Not only does she show me the book, she shows me a review that she's written, a 2-page review that she's written of what she's been reading. So what am I there to teach? Literature and social studies. So guess what I do, being who I am? I take that opportunity. I tell her to stand in front of the class. I stop the silent reading, and she's going to now read the review that she wrote of Ida B. Wells. And I tell the children, by the end of her finishing reading that, each one of them is going to tell me one thing about Ida B. Wells. And she reads, and she's shy, so I take over and I read one more time so that they can hear what was being said. And they start from that corner calling the name, and each one of them says one thing they heard about Ida B. Wells. And they move on to the next class, the other class comes. Because I understood the importance of this lesson, not just that, I had put her name on the board, Kenyatta, Ida B. Wells on the board for the children to see the name, visual, right? The visual learners. And so when the next class came, before I had erased the name, they saw the name. And one of the girls was like, excited. And I said, why are you excited? After they had sat down, because now I had erased the name. She said, I thought your name, she asked, is your name Ida B. Wells? I said, no. Because now I have already told them what my name is. She said, I thought your name was Ida B. Wells. And given who she was, I was so excited. I said, why were you excited that my name would be Ida B. Wells? And she says, I said to her, come in front of the class and tell everyone what you know about Ida B. Wells. And so I took it upon myself, because the teacher hadn't left a syllabus, no lesson plan. That was going to be the lesson for that class as well. So I read them 3 times. I said I was going to read the first time slowly, the second time a little faster, and the third time real fast, for them to listen. We're going to be, and I was explaining what skills I was teaching: listening skill, comprehension, because after this, you're going to write me 5 things. This time we're writing, we're not just using words. So with this class, it's different. 5 things that you heard about Ida B. Wells. And I have the papers with me, Kenyatta, and remind me to show them to you, because I'm going to put them in my bag that I carry, and what they wrote. And we had that. At the end of that class, when the bell rang, the bell has not even rung. It's getting close to ringing. And they said to me, can you ask Miss So-and-so if we can stay with you instead of going back to her class? Can we stay with you until school is done? Remember, I've not been treating them nicely. I rebuked those who did wrong. I stood there and I was firm and told them how to behave and how not to behave. Remember that, Kenyatta? But I haven't yelled. I haven't called them out of their name, because trust me, that was going on in that school. There was yelling and calling out of name happening from teachers to students. So these kids want to stay with me. I call the teacher and I ask, and she says, no, we can't do that. They have to come to me. But it's showing that they were engaged. They were excited. They wanted to do it more. They wanted to continue. At the end of the day, I take them to go to the bus, and one of the boys, who was referred to as a trouble boy, is left with me. And I'm asking you, so how was your day? How was your day in school? What did you learn? And he says to me, well, we learned about the woman who fought for civil rights. I said, do you remember her name? She said, well, I can't remember her name. I'm going to do something, I said to him, that's going to help you remember the name. All right. What did you learn during PE? They learned PE before leaving school, right? And it was health and wellness. So what did you learn? about health. I was like, and wellness, right? So wellness. You see? So I'm also teaching him that trick of associating things. I was like, Ida B. Wells. He said, yes. And he could remember what he learned about her. He could tell me what he remembered about what he learned about her. So that day, those children went informed and with more knowledge than they had walked into class. We had incidences where a child didn't want to talk because Spanish was their first language, and he kept saying, "But I speak English, and I can hear he can't speak English well." I told him, "Be proud of who you are. Your mother tongue is your pride." So those lessons. I say all this to say that the teachers have failed our children. I don't know what happened to the teachers that they got to the point where they have failed them, but this system we have is not a system that's meant to educate our children. Ours, Black, Wana Ubuntu children. It is there to criminalize them. It is there for the children to turtle on each other. Oh, he bullied, not to understand what happened, but he bullied and he must be reported and something must happen to him. The children are suggesting to me, call security. So Kenyatta, with an understanding of this and what we have studied, you and I, Amos Wilson, and everything we learned, I believe today that we, Black people, must detach from the white education system. And we actually have to find another word to call it, especially given Amos Wilson already is telling us the is extraction. We want to give. We want to plant seeds. We want to nurture those seeds. We want to feed and build our children. So I believe you included, and you've already started, I'm very happy because you can share your curriculum, must build an African-centered education system globally for African people. So please opine on everything I said and that need for us to detach from this system, completely detach. And we can start slowly, but eventually completely detach and build a system that's ours, where we see the world from our perspective.
Well, yes. I totally agree. And I think that no one in their right minds that care about that which is in the best interest of our people um, here and also globally, as well as the best interest of the children, and particularly, would disagree with you. Um, the school system was never meant to educate African children. It's not even capable of educating properly European children or any other group because it's not set up for that purpose. It's set up basically to make employees or develop employees, people who will keep the system moving, not people who will challenge it, or people who will build their own, or people who would become, you know, employers, and foundation uh, owners, and people who are actually build nations or develop that nation building mentality. And the only way that you can do that is to teach your own. I mean, that's just a reality. Ideally, the way it should look for us, now it's just common sense. Ideally, the way it should look is that the education process starts in the home. And within the center of that is the cultural slash spiritual growth and development. That's what makes it real, because the child must have some concept of their spiritual consciousness, their spiritual, you know, um, you know, innate, you know, that part of themselves, and how that ties into everything else. And then, as they go into the preschool and the kindergarten and start going into school, those schools have to be ran, operated, controlled, and taught by African people, by Black people, people who have the same interests, people who have the same experiences, people that know and understand, their culture and also the application of that culture in the educational or academic sense. Because sometimes we believe or think that they are two separate things. Just like we view spirituality over here, we view this over here, we view, that's the European mindset, and that's the way they teach us and indoctrinate us. But the reality is that if it's not spiritual at the center, then it's not African centered. So therefore, we have to teach our children this, and it starts in the home, it goes into the school system, and then from there, we incorporate the programs like ours and the programs, the extracurricular, the other activity that's the village. And that allows the child, no matter which direction they go in, they see themselves. And they also see that the people have a like mind and spirit. And so therefore our children at that point see the validity of things. You know, how could you see the validity in your Africanness if everything around you is European, if everything around you has feminine energy, if everything around you is pushing you towards something other than yourself? And then even your tone, you know, your masculine tone is rejected, by the system because that's threatening. So therefore you can't even talk the way you normally talk as you mature, you know? And so that's one of the first things we have to contend with when the boys come into our program. We start to notice that they're speaking through their nose. And we explain to them that, you don't have to do that. We're not intimidated by your natural voice. And then gradually they start speaking from the diaphragm. And so, like I said, in a perfect world for us, that's the way it would go. Home, the schooling, and the extracurricular activity, we would control the whole process. And then, of course, that leads us into the ideal of rites of passage and why rites of passage or why initiation, rites initiation even existed in Africa and also traditional African culture, and also why those of us who developed consciousness, here and throughout the diaspora, picked it up as something that was not only valuable, but critical when it came to the development, you know, of not only children, but also adults. And so, if I could expound on that for a second.
I'm about to. I was gonna
Yes.
ask the question so that it guides you hopefully. So yes, please speak about the rites of passage. Speak about it from what you have learned about it, not what you've
Yes.
done to adjust to your environment, right? What truly is rites of passage? What is rites of passage? And do you join when you're 15 and then drop out at 18? If I'm 30, is it too late for me to take the rites of passage? What is that? And then for us who are now returning to our way, can we go back because we haven't done it? A lot of us haven't done it, and we show symptoms of not having done it. A lot of mental dysfunction and treating each other horribly that's going on in these streets. What do you suggest? Even if people are older, in your 80s, 90s, you still have not gotten it. Do you think those people should go through rites of passage? So please, those two questions. What is rites of passage? And do you think that we should all return to rites of passage because we never got them?
Well, yes. In order to put it in context for us as African people, um, the term rites of passage was something that came about over time. A traditional African culture, from my understanding, it was referred to as initiation or initiation rites at different stages, which was something that it's considered profound by some, but it's so simple when you're an African person viewing it through the eyes and lens of a person who's dealing with your innermost intelligent self. Because why wouldn't you have people who are assigned to help you transition into the different stages? We all remember when we were very young and how we needed that hand to help us learn how to walk. We remember, at least some of us do. I remember it very well. I remember breastfeeding. I remember all the way back. But we also remember when we became that teenager, we thought we knew everything. We really believed that. A lot of us, because we seen that we were able to articulate this ourselves at a certain level. And then once we got to that 18, because they told us we were adult now, and then 21, we knew we were adult. And so we looked at it through that lens of what, society says. And therefore, the ideal of transitioning and the ideal of people helping us and all that, it was almost like we rejected that. because I'm a man now. Why you telling me this? Why you telling me that? And see, that's that Eurocentric conditioning because of not knowing who we are and what our culture has established for us and why. And so after learning that, then I realized, okay, there are 5 rites of passage processes that must occur, not that should occur, but that must occur inside of the traditional African cosmology. In other words, it must be there, starting from birth. Just imagine, we can see the correlation, or we can see the opposite, polar opposite of what happens inside of European culture. When a baby is being born inside of a white, sanitized, room with bright lights, and the first thing that the child experiences is this white person slapping them.
Mm, mm,
You know,
mm.
or just imagine that. You know what I'm saying? And compared to the midwife and the women, you know, isolating the mother, taking her through the rituals, taking her through the processes that's necessary in traditional African culture because we view uh, the child coming from the spirit world. So if the child is coming from the spirit world into the physical plane, then there must be processes. There must be preparation, you
Mhm.
know, even the naming ceremony, in this society, as soon as the child come out, okay, your name is John, or your name is this, or your name is that. There's no ritual. There's no process. They're not analyzing the child's mannerisms. They're not analyzing, they may name the child after someone or something like that, but there's no process
Yeah.
that would ensure that the child's first experiences in life is a transitionary one into our culture, into
Mhm.
our cultural way. And then at 12, 13 years old, in this society, basically you're looked at like a young teenager now, and your main thing is just to do your thing. Go out here and spend more time on the computer. You get able to hang out with your friends a little bit more. You're able to, you know, your muscles start to get a little bigger, or the women they're starting to develop, and you start to feel like you're a woman or feel like you're a man in terms of your physical self, and so therefore you kind of go into that mode of machoism, and in some case violence, aggressiveness, because you haven't been told what you should be doing with that energy.
Mhm.
On the other hand, in traditional African culture, as you know, they take the boys, they take them away in order to give them the knowledge and understanding of what to do with their muscles, to
Mhm.
what to do with that energy, to what to do with this newfound self, and how that ties into not destructiveness, but in building and protecting, embracing, helping to provide for, those in the village, the younger children, your mother, your sisters, and the elders. And so they're given responsibility, the responsibility that will now help to direct them and help them to now be on a path that keeps them from going left or right into chaos. Because if they don't have direction, then they're going to go and they're going to find a way to use that energy.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. And that's what we see out here today. And that's why our young men have that warrior spirit. They're out there killing each other, though, because they don't know what to do with that energy. And they don't have purpose because there's no one giving them the structure, the purpose, the knowledge, the history, so they understand what to do with that when they feel it. And then, of course, marriage, you know, and we already know the difference between European culture and how marriage is looked at compared to traditional African culture, where it was really about the best interests of the family and the best interests of the community. It's so different, and it's so disheartening at this point, you know, because uh, marriages nowadays, I don't have the exact statistics, but I've seen many that spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a big ceremony, and where the cake is bigger than me,
Mhm.
and it lasts about 6 months to a year because the conditioning process is for men and women to be adversaries. We're very adversarial rather than understanding roles, understanding our positions, and how together we make the balance that's necessary inside of a healthy family. That's a hard one. You got to run into the right person in order for that to work here in this society. And marriage is something that we have to be prepared for. In traditional African culture, there was preparation process so that the young women knew and understood that marriage was a process and that this is how you deal with it in order for it to be a transition that's healthy. And also, even after you get married, to have those elders who are next in line that you can go to, you know, the women and the men in the community that you can go to when you need guidance, because it's not an automatic process. Nowadays, you don't see that type of community element like you would inside our traditional African culture. And so that means it takes us into the next rites, which is eldership. I didn't say old folks ship. Eldership is two different things. And a lot of times now we'll find old folks, and particularly inside certain areas where there's not this groundedness taking place. I can go into certain rural areas of the South here in this country, and I can find some of that eldership where they want you to sit down, where they want you to talk. They want you to the elders are still in the home with the family. You know, they help raise the children. You know, the adults don't speak to them negatively. They respect them and they embrace them as father and mother. And so we still have some holdovers of that that's present here in this country, but we're losing it very fast because, as you know, in this country, when a person becomes an elder, most likely they're isolated. They're somewhere in a nursing home or they're somewhere inside of a old folks home. People don't go to see them except on holidays, and then in many cases, one day they just find them dead inside, or unalive, as they say nowadays, inside of their apartment, and no one knows what happened. And most of our elders don't even come out of the house. If they do come out, they'll come out for a doctor's appointment or something like that, and after that, they'll go back in the house because they fear. Not only do they fear uh, the society in general, but they in particularly fear even their own people, the young men in the community, because the connection to the elders has been broken because they're not being taught their culture. And so, therefore, once again, this ideal of being an elder, transitioning from an adult into an elder, that's a transition. And other elders who are already present help you go into that eldership. And your responsibility as an elder is to help raise the next generation, sit at the feet of the elders. That's what our children have to be taught so that they can never disrespect an elder, that they always stop and check and, mom so and so, do you need this? Or, can I help you with that? Or I'm going to the grocery store, can I bring you something? You know, that's mandatory within our culture. And then we have the last rite is ancestorship. So now we're talking about going back into the spirit world. With the birth process, we're coming from the spiritual world. And now, as an ancestor, we're going back to the spiritual world. Now, some might say, okay, well, it's time for you to go. You just go. That's it. Now, that process is also a transitionary process in traditional African culture. And that's why it's so important that elders be kept close. We're supposed to know when our elders are sick. We're supposed to know when they need help. We're supposed to know when their life is leaving them. And there's supposed to be a process to make sure that they're comfortable, make sure that uh, they they are well taken care of. The respect that they gave us when we were children, the help and the holding and the nurturing, that now is supposed to be done for them, so that they ease into the spiritual world in a manner that's appropriate in the African way. And we won't find that in European culture. And once again, this is why it's so important to expose our children at a very young age to who we are and also to these different rights. And when we have our programs, like in July, we do a transitionary program for the young men going into the next session, coming out of one session and going to the next. And we every time we do that program, the young men get up and they recite each rites. through the whole process for the community, you know. So that's one of the things that we do. But that's the rites of passage process, and that must. And when you think about that, it's like I said, it sounds okay. I understand that. When I first heard it, I said that makes sense, and it also is understandable why we're so disorientated and you know out of whack because we don't have that. We don't have that. You know, in general, we don't have that, and that's why rites of passage is so important.
Something as simple as we call it death instead of ancestorship. That
Yeah.
just that is detaching from who we are, because in accepting, and I tried to put, sorry y'all that the descriptions are broken up. I hope you can see that. I tried to put the etymology of the word death and initiate in the comments. And
Hmm.
death is final. Death is ending. Death is cessation. For us, ancestorship is transition, and it's a cycle. It's a circular process for us, and it's always a
Right.
circular process that continues. And when you all think about it, this thing that you're reading in these religions that came to invade and oppress us, that idea of forever and ever, never ending for eternity, what is the circle never stops? And maybe we are already in eternity and we don't even realize it. We're waiting for
Hmm.
heaven and hell, but we're experiencing hell and heaven and hell, 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 heaven and hell while we go in the cycle. So, just a different way of thinking that, to me, honestly, Brother Kenyatta, once you get over the pain of realizing you've been lied to all your life and having to shed your old ways and now returning to who you are, once you get there to deciding, okay, I'm returning, it is so much less weight. It is not burdensome. Like, it just, as painful as you, what we do is, as far as the challenges we face, right? And most of them coming from our people who are not yet, who are still under harm and are displaying that harm in how they treat us, right? As painful as that is, having this understanding truly, when you take away the loneliness of you're judged, you're called names, people don't want to associate with you, like you were working by yourself, you had to detach, and we'll talk about that, detach from colleagues who had different ideas and could not agree with you. Whatever happened there, you'll explain.
Hmm.
We go through that, but still you stand resound in what you're doing because your spirit feels at peace. This is where we should be. There's peace, and this is where we should be. It's not an ego of it is my way or the highway. It is, nah, something else is telling me I cannot shake from where I am. I cannot compromise. I cannot entertain all these compromises that keep keeping us in that bad cycle of oppression. So, and it's very, very settling, very settling to be in that mind state, despite all the challenges, like I said. So let's get into something else. And I'm glad, um, let's get into this and then we'll get into the thing that follows after this, right? Because you
Yes.
mentioned it when you said marriage.
Hmm.
What does manhood, masculinity mean from an African-centered perspective? And how is that different from what society teaches our boys today?
Well, if we analyze European uh, society, if we analyze Western society, we can see from history how they've always perceived this ideal of masculinity. Everything has always been about conquering. Everything has always been about violence, forcing themselves on others, and then subjugating others to make them believe in their way or go along with their way. Or else, if we look at this twisted anti spiritual ideal of masculinity here in European culture, we see that they were willing to not only subjugate people, but to sell their bodies, to sell them and deal with them like chattel property uh, for hundreds of years, to not treat them human in any way. And so we can go on about the viciousness of that process. But to do that shows you a lot. to have that mindset and be willing to do that and to be willing to live like that and for willing for your son to live like that and your grandsons to live like that, your wife to live like that, shows you that there were no morals, that there were no spiritual presence, you know, inside of the masculinity. And so this ideal of what a man is very twisted inside of European culture. So everything in the opposition, I'm talking about the total opposition of that, is where we find African centered consciousness in terms of manhood. Because in European society, for instance, to be a business owner and have the cutthroat mentality that you're willing to bankrupt your competition, you're willing to have uh, a conglomerate or a you have 10, 15, 20 uh, liquor stores throughout the community. Being that they make so much money, that's considered a good investment. So you look at that through the eyes of a business person and you say, that's a solid investment. That's okay. Likewise, when it comes to just about anything, I mean, military equipment, bombs, you know, like Halliburton. Halliburton is one of the biggest. Dick Cheney used to be in charge of that. Of course, oil. They have the technology now where they can eliminate, the need for oil. But they stifle that purposely so that they can continue to make money. And so all of these things are anti-people, but they make money. On the other side of that, in traditional African culture, in order to exhibit or in order to be uh, an, a businessman in the conscious spiritual way, you would have to be either providing a product or a service that's beneficial, to the people, food, clothing, something that's beneficial to the people. And if you are stepping down to the level that you start to engage in or sell things that are detrimental to the people, and that could be even music, if you're an artist. If you're an artist and you're creating music that's detrimental to the people, then that's when you step outside of that conscious spiritual presence of masculinity, you know? And that can also be applied to femininity because, of course, we have women that emulate the same type of mindset under this ideal that, I can take all my clothes off and jump around and everything and make money um, and still be this great woman. And so, you know, our perspective, and I hope I'm not going on, but our perspective of,
You're doing just
of
fine,
true
brother.
masculinity,
Hmm.
true masculinity is knowing and understanding that a man's responsibility is to protect. We've been given this physical structure for a reason. We're supposed to be on the front line. We're supposed to be the conscious, righteous warriors that's necessary in our community in order to protect, in order to embrace, in order to build, in order to maintain. You know, that's what masculinity is supposed to represent. Now, within that, that's the essence of it. But within that is the ideal of how we interact with the children, how we interact with our wives, how we interact with the elders. You know, we interact with them in a way that's in the best interest of our people. So if you have a wife, it's not about, well, I'm in charge, just do what I say. That's a European concept. It's about, let's put our heads together and come out with the best solution so that we can move forward as a collective in the strongest way possible. Now, sometimes we might come to an impasse, and that's where we have to determine how that impasse would be dealt with. And yes, in traditional African culture, the man might have certain say so,
Hmm.
and but once again, that's where our spiritual intelligence comes in.
Hmm.
Because if your woman handles the finances better than you, if she's an accountant, then what do you do? Not take advantage of that? If she's an individual who's an educator, and both of you are teaching the children, then what do you do? Do you allow your ego to say, "Well, look, I don't want to," No. If she's an educator, that means if she's scholarly in that pursuit, then that means that that's an area that you take advantage of that knowledge. And that's how we have to do with everything because that's how we make ourselves stronger. And so the ego, of course, when it's out of control, is always going to be of issue. And the other part of that, flip side to the large extreme, is the femininity.
Please
Because
speak
we
on
all
it.
have the masculinity, we all have the femininity. And in this society, black men are being told that they can be highly feminine and still be considered a man or masculine or okay. As if that's something that is a part of who we are to express ourselves in that way at that level. And it's being pushed, as we know. And that's not to knock anyone for their sexual preference. I mean, you do you. I'm not going to go around policing people and what they do. But when we talk about its benefit to the black family, when we talk about its benefit to the black community, now we have to ask ourselves, is this in the best interest? Is it in the best interest to have two mothers in the house, or two fathers in the house, or a strong African-centered conscious woman and man that's playing that role together as parents and developing a strong African conscious family? Now, anybody in their right mind can figure that out.
Anyone
But
who
this,
knows math.
yes, yes, but this society, because of their own interests, tends to confuse things for us, and especially our children because they're very impressionable. And because of them growing up inside of this reality, now we even have adults who support this mindset at the destruction, you know, of what they see happening in their own families and community. You know, if the women take the place of the men and the men take the place of the women, at that point, they got you. They got you because the men, their job is to be on the front line protecting the woman so that she can be the best she can be. There's no way that your woman, there's no way that our women can be the best that they can be and provide the best service to our families and our children and to the nurturing and the all of the things that they do if they're constantly under attack because there is no front line. The women are going to the front line and the men are going to the back and say, I I want to be feminine. I want to play that role. And so it's really not about controlling one or the other. It's really about that which is in the best interest. And I think anytime a relationship occurs or any type of marriage occurs, then that's the type of conversation that should be had.
Yes.
What's in the best interest, you
Mm-hmm.
know, of us as we begin our family? What's in the best interest of us moving forward as a collective? What's in the best interest of us being an asset to the community? You know, how do we do that? You know, and so, of course, you open yourself to ideals coming from both parties. And so, I hope I'm answering your question, sister.
Yes, you are feeding us all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are feeding us all. I told you I knew this was going to be powerful, and it is. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to ask a question, and as you've noticed with my style of asking, I also make
Yeah.
comments because I
Yes, not a problem.
feel like this is what we are. You gain knowledge, you share it. No one should apologize for, like, again, the European system. You have to ask questions a certain way. You cannot reply. All that restriction when we are people who are fluid and open. And
Yes,
as long as you're grounded in serving your people and bringing life, we're good.
indeed, indeed.
So, how do we stop that adversarial nature? You've explained to us what manhood is and
Mhm.
masculinity, which is what my new understanding understands of manhood and masculinity. And I'm struggling to explain this to our brothers who are beholden to the Western way and they don't understand that they're being Western. They think they're being the African way because Africa was already poisoned and they're thinking they're following the right way, but Africa was already poisoned, right?
Right.
So, how do we stop that adversarial nature of marriage? And what is needed to bring back healthy relations of life bringing and nurturing? Notice I'm not calling them marriage. I'm being very intentional when I can to move away from their language. I'm
Hmm.
calling them healthy relations of life bringing. That's the purpose of man and woman coming together to bring life forth
Hmm.
and nurturing that life. And if you are found to be in a situation where you can't bring life, you nurture the life of members of the community, the young ones around you. So you don't necessarily have to bear life, but nurturing is a must. And the two of you work together to be better members of community and to serve and to nurture in a better way. So
Mhm.
I say that also saying, is it, well, let me let you answer. Let me stop controlling how you answer. Let me let you answer. So let me
Not
ask
at
the
all.
question.
Not at all. I
Yes,
understand.
let me ask the question again.
Yes.
How do we stop that adversarial nature of marriage? And what is needed to bring back healthy relations of life, bringing and nurturing?
Well, once again, I said this in the beginning of our program. I'm not a scholar in this area, and so I have to remind all of our listeners uh, because people might start, you know, inboxing me for marriage counseling and so on. But in reality,
I'm about
uh,
to inbox you for marriage, but go ahead.
I'm really everything that I approach in terms of conversations about our people, about our children, about relationships, about our community, and about the Black nation is based upon an African centered and spiritual view. Not religious, but spiritual. And I don't want to say that in a negative way because there's a lot of religions out there that I believe are practicing in a spiritual centered way. But sometimes you know how it goes. We get away from the spirit and we start dealing with all of the formats and dogma and a lot of different things that may take us away from our innermost selves.
And all
Um,
those religions have that, which means, again,
yes,
African spirituality. It's okay to
yeah,
say, Brother
yes,
Kenyatta.
yes,
Let's not
yes,
confuse the
yes,
people,
yes.
right? Go on.
And see that spiritual presence, what we call living in harmony. In step, that's what we kind of how we define it as harmony. In other words, we don't even step on a bug unless we have to. You know, I remember years ago we was at this event that we had for fundraisers, a skating event, uh, and everybody was on their way home, and we had a bunch of children kind of over against the wall waiting for their parents. And I remember out of nowhere seeing a young man come running through the crowd, and he jumped up in the air and he slammed right on top of a big group of ants. And the ants were trying to get the food to the inside of the little crack, and he just stomped them all. And other children were watching the ants in amazement because there were so many of them. But he just flew over there and just stomped them. And I went over there and I really got on him about that and chastised him. And he was looking at me like, what did I do wrong? What's the big deal? They're ants. And so I had to really help him understand that we don't kill anything unnecessarily.
Mhm.
If them ants didn't attack you or hurt you in any type of way that was detrimental to your existence, then why would you try to hurt them and be detrimental to theirs? There's a purpose for everything. And yours is not to destroy, it's to build. And so we had to really get into him and take time to get into him. Thank God I had some other brothers watching everything for me at the time. But the point is that anti-spiritual mindset is what tends to move us because how can you be African centered in your relationship if you're Eurocentric and everything else?
Mm.
It doesn't add up.
No.
So if we've been conditioned into a Eurocentric mindset from birth, you know, everything from our schooling to our job to our institutions we're involved in the community, and in some cases even our religious institutions, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
then when you come into a union and you try to establish something, concrete and balanced, then you're going to abide by those same principles that you've been abiding by inside of your normal way of existence and the way that the society has conditioned you. So the first thing I believe that has to happen is that the people involved, and that's where it comes into the ideal of preparing ourselves for relationships, you know. the ideal of making sure that, first of all, we have the right mindset. We
Mm.
have the right understanding of things. Because if one is Eurocentric and the other one's African-centered, then you know, that's a lost cause. Because unless you plan on doing a lot of teaching and a lot of grooming and a lot of holding hands, but and even then, if the person's not ready, they're not ready. And I've experienced that, so I know exactly how that goes. Sometimes just being a good person, we believe that's enough. And we're attracted to good people as African people, spiritual people who carry themselves in a moral way. But still, there's a difference because one person's understanding of spirituality may be different from another's. Because some people view spirituality strictly through religion,
Mhm.
you know, and then others view it in, the African centered perspective because everything is spiritual, you know, everything is spiritual. We have to look at the plants. We have to look at, the environment in terms of how we treat it. We have to look at, how we grow food and the beauty of that, growing what we need for our own sustenance. We have to look at the birth process. We have to look at how everything, as we said earlier, with the transition into ancestorship. We have to look at all those things for a spiritual eye. We don't look at nothing anti-spiritual. And so if you have a person who looks at it differently, then that means there are going to be many occurrences inside of that relationship that you're going to run into, that you're going to be at odds with each other.
Mhm.
Because one is operating through a spiritual lens and the other is operating through the standard Western or Eurocentric lens that's been conditioned into them. And we all fight with that.
Mhm.
Anybody who has been exposed to European culture has the blood and the saliva of the beast on them. You know, I grew up in the United States, so I was indoctrinated into all these different systems. And I remember how hard it was, you know, to shake certain things. And first coming in contact with knowledge by some brothers who were very powerful and they were dropping it on me and I was rejected. I was like, you crazy, man. Because I just couldn't see,
Mhm.
you know. Even the concepts sounded so foreign that I thought they were crazy.
Exactly.
And gradually I started to learn. And, for your listening audience and for any of those who may be able to see this video at a later date, I emphasize reading, studying, independent knowledge and study, and that your children are taught to research, taught to, in this day and time, of course, they have YouTube, they have the videos, they have, you know, so many ways they can access information, but making sure that you access the information that's valuable and that's going to be able to be used into development of yourself, your family, and your people. And once you start doing that, then the ideal of being a husband or the ideal of being a mate or ideal of even interacting with women, at any level becomes a very spiritual thing. And so I think that, in regard to relationships, I believe that that's where you go first. Develop yourself culturally, develop yourself spiritually, and make sure that when you sit down with a woman that you feel you have an attraction to and you have plans to move forward with, that conversation exists, that conversation is clear about the ideal of being moral and spiritual and conscious, and because that's the center of all other African-centered thinking. You know, it must be spiritual at the center. And if a relationship is not there, you know, the Christians say equally yoked. If that's the case, then that means that you're gonna run into problems. You're gonna run into problems, or either you may stay together, but you're gonna have headaches all the way because some just hold on. Some just hold on, and that's great. But if you're a fighter, you just want to continue to fight the rest of your life. But the question is, what type of building are you doing? You know, as a collective, what type of building can you do if you're at odds with each other and look at each other as adversaries? You know, everything's an argument rather than a collaboration. And so I guess that's how I would look at it. And this is a conversation that we have to have with the young people, of course, because the concept of relationships, and uh, marriage, or any type of interaction with male female is so twisted in this society, all over the world now, but and particularly inside of the United States, and particularly with the onset of technology,
Mhm.
where they're seeing chaos from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed, if they go to bed. You got to make sure you take the phone away from them and the computer, because they're being, constantly bombarded with these images, these negative images of black women, these highly sexualized images of black women. So they find themselves being uh, perceived to be attracted, you know, to that which they think is the way it should be, or that which is popular, or the Beyonces, and because of the fact that that's what society says got it going on. So it's a serious challenge. A serious challenge, and that's why as you know, not too long ago we had the International Black Queens Day.
Mhm.
That's why
Yes.
we have that. That's one of the reasons why we have that, because before we have that program, we have a whole project, a whole
Mhm.
course, in-depth course about black women
I look
and
forward
the
to the
role.
next. Mhm.
Excuse me.
I look forward to the next one.
Yes, yes, we're going to make sure that we give you that invitation. Uh, the challenge is that the venue
Mhm.
was so small that we didn't really have, as much room as we did years ago. We actually do used to do it at the Wisdom. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Wisdom building. It used to be on James Street, Sister Frederica Bay,
No, I'm
and
not. Yeah.
it was a very large facility. And
Mhm.
as a result of that, we were able to literally open the door and let the sisters come in,
Yeah.
and they filled up the room every year. And the brothers do the program for them. You know, beautiful dinner. We serve them. They don't have to get out of their seats. We do
We
everything
we
for
need
them.
we need to talk to a few people. We're gonna get a big one for the next one. So let's do that.
Okay, okay, all
We
right,
need
all
to
right.
talk to a few people. We
That's
we
not
need
a
to hold
problem.
a few people accountable, put their feet to the fire, because
About a few things. About a few things.
about a few things.
Yes, but that program. Once again, is geared towards what we're talking about in
Mhm.
terms of preparing young men,
Mhm.
because before they experience that and the courses that relate to it, a lot of times their concept of black women, and particularly humbling themselves to that feminine energy,
Hold on.
don't exist.
Kenyatta, hold on 1 minute. You mean
Yes,
men are supposed to humble themselves to the feminine energy? Is that not going to take? You know what? Hold up.
yes,
Let me ask
yes.
this question because it's going to address that. Let me ask this question.
Okay, okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm trying very much not to guide too much, not to
Yes,
influence how
yes.
you speak, because again, I want the men who are watching to see that this is a brother saying this. And it's not about laying blame, who's at fault, who's to blame, who should. It's about we are in serious danger. And if we don't fix how we are moving as a community, our family will be rotted. And it is the root of our community. And we have to return it to its original way of being that is not as toxic as we're moving right now. Children, mother, father, male, female, elders, all of that. And our ancestors as well, how we honor them. That has gone and we need to return to it. Um, Many of our young men struggle with identity. You talked about the reason why you all started, right? What was going on in the community, but also them coming to you, they're speaking from their nose instead of their regular voice, feeling that they have to tone down and feminize their voices. How does STEP actively work to decolonize their minds? Also, mental wellness attached to that one. Mental wellness is a big deal, right? But the thing I've realized, and give me a moment to just explain this. The thing I've realized as we return to who we are is there's a lot of co-opting by Western entities that's happening, right? The CIA, I tell you, all those entities are in there corrupting what we're doing and creating confusion. So that we know mental wellness is a great, it's a profound, it's a important part of our returning, right? Because we're so traumatized. But now they have co-opted it where it's an excessive. And I say to my people, and I'm gonna say this today if I've never said it on Kumbukeni, nothing African is excessive. When you encounter excessiveness, it is Western. So just know that and walk away. African culture is not excessive in any way at all. It is grounded in balance, so it's not excessive. So when you hear a mental wellness thing that dismisses everything else, walk away. And African culture is not linear. It does not focus on one thing and leave the other. It does not focus on the man and leave the woman and the child. It does not focus on the child, a male child, and leave the girl child. It deals with all. It does not focus on the environment and not talk about the exploitative ways of so-called economy. It deals with everything. African culture is multitasking, can do it all at the same time to sustain life. So when you encounter anything that doesn't do that, it is not African culture. Let's just have that as a grounding today. And Brother Kenyatta, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So mental wellness is a thing for our young men and our young women. But today we're talking about the young men because that's the program you run. And for those who are listening, if you know anyone, a sister doing this for young women, please connect me with them so that we can bring them on. All right. Brother Kenyatta hopes to, in the future, with sisters that they are working with, open one in Newark. And hopefully this community is going to support so that we get to that point. Mental wellness, how can we do it without losing the masculinity? Because the extreme, and I've heard this word, a simp, without our men becoming simps or thinking they're becoming simps. This is the word I encountered, and you can break that word down because I don't even know it. I'm just using it because I heard it was used. How do we deal with mental wellness without and maintaining that masculinity without turning
Hello? Are you still there? Look like your computer froze for a minute.
Sorry, that's the internet. So I had to be patient and wait for it. That's
Yes.
my internet.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
How do we deal with mental wellness without losing the masculinity of our boys, without making them feel that they must be feminine, soft, gentle to be mentally well? How can you maintain masculinity and still address mental healing?
Right, right. Um, as complex as a question and an answer can be like that because of the need to not belittle or downplay in any way mental illness. I believe that when we're talking about psychological issues, you know, as opposed to some type of, you know, uh, inherent problem that a person was born with, mechanical stuff or whatever. I believe that the same thing that wasn't there that caused the problem, we have to reverse that. During the enslavement of our ancestors, we were taken away from our culture and we were given a bastardized version of culture. You know, everything from our food, our languages, our clothing. We couldn't practice our own religions, our own spiritual systems. So naturally, when everything about you is taken and forbidden for hundreds of years, and you're force fed or forced into another way of living that's totally foreign, totally in opposition of what you believe, what your natural inherent consciousness believes, then why wouldn't you have mental problems? So the way we look at it and the way we approach it is that we all have mental issues. Every black man and woman that's been exposed to European culture, European enslavement, European colonization, have mental issues, emotional issues. Now, healing that or searching for the remedies to go back in the other direction means first you have to acknowledge that. If you don't acknowledge the fact that They have made sure that we are out of our minds and that we're constantly bombarded to keep us there and to reinforce that. Then there's no way that you're going to be able to come up with any type of real solutions. You have to first admit that there's a problem. And then, secondly, the same way they took away the culture, all those are elements of the culture: food, clothing, you know, our spiritual system, everything, you know. Culture, we define culture as the norms, the values, the behaviors, you know, of the people. They changed all of that. So if that's what they took in order to get us here, then why isn't it we're trying to put that back as the first method of solution? And that's as educators, sociologists, you know, whomever is responsible for making sure that our children, our families, and our community gets what it needs and become more healthy again. Um, when you're in the belly of the beast, we can look at this in that context. Then, of course, you're going to have some blood and saliva, you know, of the beast on you. No one could be swallowed by the beast and not have some of that on them. No one, you know. So if we can ourselves first, because we have to teach the youth. So if we can ourselves pull away rather than trying to integrate, but pull away so that we can begin to see clearer and then replace what they're force feeding us through media and through education institutions, through, you know, replace that with that which is true to us and our existence. We don't have to recreate the wheel. What we have to do is go back home. We start there because our ancestors have created so much. They have left guideposts everywhere for us. If we would just take the time to revisit Sankofa, you know, back to what they have already left us, we don't have to recreate the wheel. And then we can take that and start to build upon it and make it fit no matter where we are on the planet, where we are, you know, throughout the states, where we are throughout the diaspora. That's what the young man or the young woman in Johannesburg has to do. And that's what the young man and young woman in Newark, New Jersey has to do. We have to help them understand the value in reattaching themselves to our cultural way of existence, the beauty in it, to help them understand that that is your salvation. And unless you do that, then yes, this mental trauma that we feel, this anguish, because it's not like it's over. They're piling it on every day. You know, I might go back out and get in the vehicle and drive 2 blocks and get stopped by the police and he pull his gun and put it in my face. I mean, this is ongoing trauma. It's not over. It didn't end with the Atlantic slave trade. So taking that in consideration, we have to detach ourselves and start to develop ourselves culturally, develop ourselves spiritually, and do for self, build for self, organize for self. And see, when we start helping our children understand that, you know, all of these things that you do for them, you know, if we just were able to, I mean, this is just more philosophical than realistic when it comes to what we're dealing with here, because we know a lot of our entertainers and actors and you know, our sports figures, the people that help to control their careers tell them do not do what I'm getting ready to say. But the bottom line is that just imagine the amount of money that goes through the hands of the athletes and the entertainers and those who find themselves aligned with the system. Just imagine if just 1/3 of that money was utilized for the purposes of building in behalf an economic program for the black community, you know, land for the black community. In other words, for those who are willing, you know, schools, hospitals, you know, any of those things that we know we need helping to fund that, even if you're not willing to be involved. That's the mindset that we have to try to redevelop, try to build. There was a time, not that long ago, that that was our mindset, you know, pre COINTELPRO.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why the system of COINTELPRO was created,
Mm-hmm.
because no matter what they did to us before that, we kept bouncing back, you know, after enslavement. As soon as the Emancipation Proclamation, as soon as we started coming off the plantation, we started building cities. We started going around the country, finding our children and finding our wives, and we started building
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of cities that we controlled everything. So of course, we know what happened after that. But then after, you know, the destruction of Black Wall Street, the destruction of Rosewood, the destruction, what they call Red Summer. For those who are not familiar with it, look it up. Look up Red Summer and the cities that were destroyed around the country. Around the country.
You can come back, brother, if you want to talk about that. We can have a session where we talk about that together because I'm
Yes,
studying about it
yes,
as well. Mm-hmm.
yes. That was
Mm-hmm.
1919. And
Mm-hmm.
then Tulsa was 1921.
Mm-hmm.
And then Rosewood was 1923. This was back to back. They were destroying everything that they seen us build. But the point is that it's next thing you know, they got their foot off our neck for a second, said, okay, I think they're down now. And we
Mm-hmm.
start building again. The Renaissance period, the Black Power movement, the
Mm-hmm.
Black Liberation movement. So COINTELPRO at the end of, mid 60s, going through the late 60s, early 70s, the whole purpose was to hit us with a five-pronged process that was unlike what they had already done.
Mm-hmm.
Drugs funneled into our communities, right? Prison industrial complex, assassinate all the leaders, indoctrinate and infiltrate all the organizations, and the feminization of black men. All this at one time.
Yes.
And as a result of that, we have never recovered. And being that it worked so well, they said, we don't have to create nothing else. We just keep revamping that every so many years. So when we see a new drug come out, that's just a revamp. And
Mm-hmm.
COINTELPRO still exists. And so the point is, liquor stores on every corner.
Mm-hmm.
The only community in the country that happens or can happen.
Yeah.
And so, you know, our children grow up believing that those older guys that's over there drinking liquor, they're cool. And so therefore, I want to wait. Can't wait till I get a little older so I can drink liquor too. I remember that stage. And so the point is that, you know, the onslaught is still taking place, and it's going to continue. We are forced to think like we think. You know, they call it radicalism or black extremism. No, our reality says use your own intelligence and do that which is in the best interest of your people. So rites of passage must exist. Female rites of passage must exist. You know, black schools, African-centered institutions must exist. And the connection of black people throughout the diaspora, African people throughout the diaspora, must exist.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we must do for our very survival. There is no other way to survive because they take our best and our brightest and they put them in MIT, they put them inside of these institutions, and then they utilize them to maintain their power.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn to teach our children while they're young before they get to the MITs and the Harvards and these other schools, and so they know and understand that when they go and get their education or higher learning, that they come back and they build in behalf of their people, no matter where they are.
Exactly.
And that's the intergenerational, transfer. It's so important, and so we're trying our best to uh, continue to move in that direction uh, as an organization. we're trying our best to make sure that as we expand, that we also start to develop different types of programs and activities so that we can hold on to those young ones that go away to college, that go away to, these different institutions of higher learning or trade school or whatever, because a lot of times in a lot of organizations, once they reach that stage, that's it.
Yeah.
You don't hear from them anymore.
Yeah.
And if they're very successful, they may not even be nowhere around the black community because that's part of the so-called success in this Eurocentric dynamic. It's like they're successful. They live out in Upper Verona somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
married to a white woman.
Mm-hmm.
What did that do for us when we nurtured them from birth? If we don't have the African-centered structure in place, then we will see more of that rather than them coming back and nurturing that which they came from, you know?
Yeah. We have a question from the audience. One question. I'll check
Yes.
if any other. But before we go there, you've been on for 26 years. I'm going to say quickly, in my
Mm-hmm.
language, I'm of the Akamba people. We speak Kikamba. And
Okay.
in Kikamba, education is known as Kisomo. Kisomo. I'll write it down.
Okay.
Kisomo. And what Kisomo is the noun, right? The education. But it comes from and this is Bantu naming is this much this way. It takes the verb and then it creates the noun out of the verb, right? The action, and then it creates the noun, the person who's supposed to be doing the action, that noun, the thing that action represents, it creates the verb, it creates the noun. So kusoma is to read, to study.
Mm-hmm.
Kusoma, literally, you cannot say kusoma if you're not getting a book and reading it. If you're not going to be reading and studying, that's not education. The word is kisomo, and in it is soma. And kusoma is to read. So
Okay.
that's what learning is for us. There's no learning without reading or being read to or being spoken to. There's no learning without consuming information. None.
For sure.
So, just to help you as we return to who we are, to show you that the intelligence, the wisdom is in our languages. And that's one of the works that I'm doing is to prove, to show who we are, who we were through our languages, and also how similar we are through our languages, even the Ebonics of the people who were brought here and still retained their Africanness through blood, through the spirit way, whichever way, right? Even that language, those languages connect them to the African languages and show the similarities that we have, which is why we say one Black nation, one African nation, one Ubuntu nation. We must get to that mindset. We never were, but now that we've faced a threat that shows to break us, we have to be. And that's called, it's not evolution, it's the word that you progress based on the threats you face, the risk to life, so that you can become a more resound community that is sustaining life, so that you can be more life-giving. You grow and you embrace something you hadn't embraced before. So before we were divided, before it was the Akamba people, the Yoruba people, we were attacking, we were capturing, we were selling. No more of that. We unify now because of those divisions, we were taken advantage of. We were enslaved. We were colonized. We're still colonized. And unfortunately, some of us are still enslaved. So we must now embrace unity because there are things that we have in common globally, Black people. Globally. You can say you're not a monolith, but there are things that are monolithic about who we are.
Indeed.
Anyway, Brother Kamal, radicalism, I'm calling it now that you pointed it out and my brain went there. I'm calling it a return to self. That's what we're going to start calling it. What we do is standing 10 toes down on returning to self and inspiring others to return to self. And what is self? Mwana Ubuntu, our Ubuntu way. Everything you said is Ubuntu. Everything you talked about today, that's what it describes: the marriage, the main, the masculinity, all that. That's what it is. Before we go to this question, cost of doing business, so that we can address that thing you pointed out about the athletes that don't support, right? And I went to the Walter Rodney conference a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week. Now I'm forgetting. Time flies by. And one of the things that was said, one of the sisters said that two things that are keeping us from liberation is entertainers and sports people, I think she said, and devices, one of the two, but entertainers was there. And sports people fall under entertainers. I have to look at my notes. But so what is the cost of doing business per year, if you can remember, to run the program as you have been so far? What expenses have you incurred? I'm asking not to get into your business, but so that those who are listening, and if one athlete, Kyrie, I'm looking at you, wink, wink, hears us and decides to spend money, they know at least that it's possible and what can they spend, right? So that we can understand how possible these things are. How much does it cost you a year to run your activities, all the activities you do throughout the year, roughly?
Well, that's it varies. It varies. If we were doing the things that we need to do, want to do, should be doing, then it would cost a lot more than it actually does because we budget ourselves on a shoestring because we just don't have those type of funds to do the trips and So instead of going, for instance, we used to years ago we was able to receive a certain amount of funding, and we used to go down to the Blacks and Wax Museum, the Stromberg Museum, take them to different places. But uh, when that wasn't available and we didn't have the type of funding and out of our pockets were just drying up, uh, which we've been doing for a long time, we found ourselves taking them to the park, taking them up to the basketball court, taking them to the boxing gym. Um, and in between the trip from walking or either busing or wherever to those places, we'd engage in the urban self-defense training, to make it a whole process, So urban health self-defense is, the um, process of teaching the children how to survive and prosper inside of the urban reality and all realities because it's necessary. See, that's why rites of passage have to be creative. Well, no matter where you are, you have to analyze, where it is that you happen to be and also what your circumstances are. So, of course, we got to teach them how to watch out for cars. We got to teach them how to ride on public transportation strategically. We got to teach them how to watch out for stray animals, how to watch out for police officers that may not have good intention, and their own people. And so all of these different things to survive, to be able to survive, and then also to be able to navigate so that you can go where you got to go, be safe, make it home properly. A lot of times children are not taught those type of things scientifically. And so what we do is make it a trip so that on the way to the boxing gym or on the way to the court or on the way to the vegan spot that we eat, we're teaching them, you know. We have simulated gunshots, where out of nowhere we go and they have to know what to do, you know. Not panic and just do anything. They have to know exactly what to do because we teach them ahead of time, you know, how to respond. Because as we know, we're living in that type of society now. So this is reality training. And so it's hard to put a number on it because we make it our business because of whatever situation we find ourselves in to make it happen. Kind of like our mothers and fathers did down through history. If we only had one piece of cornbread or one piece of chicken or whatever, and you had 5 children, then you're gonna cut that up and make a nice soup. You're gonna cut that up and make a nice gumbo, you know, and everybody gonna get a little bit of everything, you know. And so that's what we've been doing. Now, if we were to go on our trips that we schedule, then now the cost would be completely different because it costs a certain amount of money for buses and travel. It costs a certain amount of money for venues. It costs a certain amount of money for food, while you're moving. So then it would be completely different. So, like I said, it's kind of hard to say this is what it is unless I say this is what it should be, and this is what we would do if we had the funding that
Talk
we
about
budget.
talk about both, right? What is it? What could it be, if roughly?
Um, I believe that in order to go, because we do 2 sessions per year. We go from January through June or July, and then July through December. So we're all year round. So just in one of those sessions, um, if we had $5,000, we would be able to make it a much more beneficial session for the children. And that's including trips, you know.
A year?
No, a 6 month period.
In six
So
months. So yeah, the
6 month period for two sessions, which is the entire year, then it would be double of that. Uh,
$10,000.
it would be double, yes. And then the other thing is that we provide the children with uh, a uniform, which is a shirt that has the pledge on it. I am the black man, intelligent, strong, and proud. From this day forward, I pledge my life to the continued development of myself, my family, my community, and the total and unconditional liberation of our people. That's on everybody's shirt. And it's also inside their books. And they must learn that as soon as they come in. So we give them shirts, we give them books, we give them red, black, and green. Everybody has the red, black, and green bandanas and wristbands as soon as they come in. So it's certain things that we provide. And then also, children must eat. So every time they're with us, they must eat. Um, and we're selective about our diets. Um, you know, we everything we feed them is natural, organic, and also vegan. And so a lot of our children have become, much more healthy and conscious about their diets because of the not only the diet that we give them, but also the curriculums, on these subjects. We're very big on health and nutrition and them learning and understanding how to be selective. Um, but yeah, that's, and then of course we talked before about our building. We're in the process because that changes the dynamics when we talk about monies or funding. Uh, we were blessed to purchase a building from the city of Newark for a discounted price. This was in 2018. And we had begun the process of raising funds and also doing the outside work. And because it was a complete renovation. And so the pandemic hit. I think it was the beginning of 2000 or something like that. I mean, beginning of what was it?
2020.
Beginning of 2020, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the pandemic hit. And after that, it just derailed us completely, as far as funding, as far as everything, contractors. It just threw everything off, and so it took us a while to get back on board. So now we're back in the ideal of raising funds and trying to get that building up and running. Thus far, we're about right at the 60 to 70% mark of we finished the outside. We're a long way on the inside, but we still got that last part of the building that we must raise funds for in order to actually get the building up and running, or the certificate of occupancy from the city, so that we can actually utilize the building. And at that point, now we're talking about different budgetary needs. We're talking about different programs and activities. The female rites of passage program you talked about, we will be calling on you, sister, to definitely be a part, because we need brothers and sisters to come in and be a part of this growth. Um, it's possible, we're not sure yet. Once we get the building up and running, we may end up having uh, a black owned, operated educational center, uh, because in the daytime, we might do that also. That's definitely a jump for us in another direction, because we never planned on being, a
It's a
school or
great, great
educational center.
direction.
Uh,
Ashe, ashe, ashe.
but also, because the female rites of passage, as we know, and particularly inside of the states, our young women are going through the same type of, uh, you know, debilitating and indoctrinating types of things that our young men are going through. Even the violence. Matter of fact, some years ago, I found out that women are the fastest growing prison population now. Black women.
I literally, that's the course I'm taking right now, right? The,
Mm-hmm.
the criminalization of blackness. But just last week, we were assigned an article by this author that talks about, and her research is on the criminalization of the black girl.
Mm-hmm.
How back then, death row, Kenyatta,
Yes.
13 years old, for the smallest thing, black girls were criminalized, and to this day still, and you've seen it. I mean, you've seen it, the way we are pushed around by the police. They don't even stop to think this is a woman. Your underwear is exposed, your bra is coming off, they're pulling you. They don't
Yes.
even care. So, yes. And we're
And
not,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
go
I
on.
mean to
Like I
cut you off.
said, we can't just focus on the woman. We focus on the boy. We focus on the woman. It is a balance and we can do it. Go on, brother.
Well, definitely, definitely. And anytime that a society's women are disrespected, then we know that the society itself, the community itself, the people themselves are not doing their job. They're not organized. They're not in a position to stop the disrespect of themselves. Because it's no way that the black women, our elders, our children, could be beat down, shot down, and dealt with in the manner that they are in this society if we ourselves were organized and moving as a collective. Because that's the way that it puts others on notice. Because right here in Newark, we have the ironbound section. And so if you've ever been past the train station and you go inside East Newark, you'll see that when you cross the line, it's like you're in a completely different, you know, town. Police allow them to, double park, and you'd never see a police accosting anyone down there, black or white police, because they're an organized community. They move as a block, they patronize themselves. Everything that they do is inside that community, and any type of outside interaction is only to bring more funds in that community so that they can function even better. They control the school systems, they control, and so same thing if you ever go to Edison, New Jersey. I don't know if you ever been to Edison, New Jersey, but down there it's the East Indian.
I have.
They bought up everything. They control that. And so what we have to do is understand that, we don't have to change everything inside of the United States at one time. But wherever we are and wherever we have concentrations of ourselves, then we have to organize those areas. Newark is still predominantly black, you know? And so it's the demographics is changing a little bit because of gentrification downtown, but it's still predominantly black. And if we were organized, not just political faces, but if we were organized, because it really comes from the grassroots level, then at that point, Ironbound would have nothing on us. They would have nothing on us. And
No.
we would have to be respected because there would be accountability. The police department works for the people. And if the people are not organized, then they are, radical elements in the community, you know? And so if we're organized, then now they're an extension of that organization because they know that there's an accountability process in place and that if they disrespect one of us in any way, that there's going to be a problem, that we're going to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, when you pool your resources together and when you establish that power base, now you're talking about economic power.
Mm-hmm.
And the economic power influences the politicians. The economic power influences police department and everybody else. When you start pulling them funds and you start to sue them in court and have top-notch lawyers and black faces that step up and that's willing, the Ultimaticses that we, Ashe, the brother who's no longer with us, as well as, there's been so many that was those warrior lawyers, those, warrior doctors and warrior, we've had, no matter what their profession, they were the warriors that were out front looking out for us. We have to produce more of those. And the way you produce them is organize your community. And so that's what we have to do in order to make sure that what we see,
Is that me?
takes place.
My signal?
Are you still there?
1 minute. Sorry, say that one more time. We lost the signal again. Sorry.
I was saying that that's what we would have to do, produce more of those warrior. We teach the young men that no matter what you want to do, you want to go into sports, that's up to you.
Yeah.
If you want to go into entertainment, that's up to you. We're not going to knock that. If you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer, you know, if you want to be a business owner. But whatever field you go in, you are in fact a warrior doctor, a warrior lawyer, a warrior athlete, a
Absolutely.
warrior entertainer, because
Absolutely.
you still pledge your allegiance to that which is in the best interest of your people. And therefore, you make sure that you participate in that well being. And
Absolutely.
if we can reconnect our people to that way of thinking, that's where the organization occurs. And
Mhm.
we'll be a power overnight. That's what we
We
should
have an
do.
election coming up in Newark. You've been
Mhm.
having trouble getting certification. Newark has been taken over by the Hispanic community that you were describing that's over the bridge. While it is majority Black, there's not enough people representing that majority Black. Because even if we have a Black mayor, if he's in a room with these Hispanic people, and I'm being very clear about who they are, I am not mincing my words because this is truth. They shut him down. He cannot fight alone. He cannot fight alone. And then we have the Jews, owners of property in Newark. They don't live there, but they own property and they're controlling property. And they're
Yes, indeed.
controlling who takes the property, including the S.T.E.P program that wants to own a building. They're controlling all that. We have to get them out. We have to organize and get them out. We have to stop the shooting. We have to stop the selling of the drugs, the time that you spend selling and shooting and doing all that nonsense and talking nonsense and watching sports and doing whatever it is that you do that is wretched. Stop it and come together to organize. We need to, if you need to connect with Brother Kenyatta, I was about to call you Brother Kamau. I'm taking you to the Mau Mau right now, Brother Kenyatta. If you need to connect with our brother, let me know. The website is right there. You've heard what their needs are. You've heard that. Listen, the other day someone was talking about how back in the day athletes, because they had, oh my God, I'm forgetting the football player. For those of you who watch Joffrey or Godfrey and 154, I think is the show that they're
Right.
running now, right?
Yes, yes.
They had, I forget the football player, back in the day in the 80s, football player. And he was asked about how much they're earning now, and he was like, "Man, it's nowhere close to what we made then. Then I made 3 million a year, and it was great. Now it's in the hundreds of
Hmm.
millions.
Yeah.
And you all want to tell me that that person cannot give 10,000 years? One of them cannot commit to $10,000 a year to this program, even 50,000, $100,000 a year to this program. Because immediately, Brother Kenyatta, I'm thinking I need to take you all to Kenya. You need to go to the motherland. That mountain behind us, Mount Kilimanjaro, you need
Yeah.
to go and sit with her and connect spiritually with her. I'm already thinking that.
Uh-huh.
$100,000 from one athlete who's making hundreds of millions is possible. I don't give a shit. I don't care what anyone says as far as their expenses nonsense. Reduce your expenses. You don't need a Maserati, buy a Toyota.
Yes, yes.
You don't need a mansion that has all those expenses. Get a nice, simple house, 4 bedroom. Your family is good. Get your security. Reduce your expenses, athletes and entertainers, so that you can serve us because
Yeah.
you're getting the money right now. So that you can give 100,000 to Kenyatta. Forget the 10,000. 100,000 because we want to build trips to the continent. We want to return the boys, the young men, and then the young women to the continent. Brother, before I get carried away, two questions. There's one. And I thank you so much for today. If
Mhm.
you can't provide for kids without leaving them in someone else's care all day, which is our current state, or building the parts for the war machine, should you still have them? Oh, my dear Joy Lama, I hope you haven't gotten to this mindset. Brother, answer that one. Mhm.
So it says if you can't provide for your children without leaving them with someone else, ah. Now, if you're speaking from a young lady that's very young, and that's trying to figure this thing out before she gets there, that's one thing. If you're, because you got plenty of time to organize and connect with the people, that's why we must go back to the African-centered way, um, family as well as community. But if you're talking about someone who's already there and they find themselves, maybe thinking they want to have more children or whatever the case may be, or they're right at the edge of that with a man that they're ready to have children with, then I would say that it's almost really the same answer. Um, we're a communal people. So when we talk about African centeredness, it's different. This answer is different compared to Eurocentricness. Because in Western society, wherever you leave your child is a problem. You got to really be careful because we see what's going on. And that's why this question exists. In the African centered perspective, of course, you still have to be aware, but at the same time, having people who have like mind and spirit and also have similar elements that they're dealing with, similar, because a lot of children in the African centered community need babysitting too. A lot of them need support. A lot of them need that camaraderie that you find inside of the village environment. That's what the village environment, that's the spirit that it came out of. You know, grandma taking care of the children, auntie, you know, Miss Ellen down the street, you know, my father, when my father was living, Ashe, he uh, literally used to have a backyard full of children at all times. And when we had to paint or clean, and they did too. And it wasn't the question of whose children and whether or not we got to feed them, because he was thinking in that communal spirit. And a lot of them, once they got 18 or 19 years old, he would let them go to work with us because we had a construction business. And he actually put them to work and paid them and taught them construction. And so the point is that that type of communal way is really what we have to connect with again in order to not only feel comfortable, but in order to have more uh, ability for safety with our children when we leave them with someone else. Now, if you don't have an extended family, or if you don't have, say, a mother still living, or a grandfather, or people there in order to help take care of the child if necessary, then that means you're going to have to establish that, or you just won't. If you don't want to have children, you won't have children. But that's the way. We're going to have to get back to that because our reality dictates that we do. It's not even a philosophical thing. It's not even well, we do it like this in this religion, or whatever. This is a reality that um, we created solutions for inside of our culture. You know, this was a part of our culture. We did things as a communal people. Now we know that's a challenge starting from scratch, especially if you're not already tied in like that. But we suggest that our people do get back tied in. Um, we're involved with a course right now with our children about emergency preparedness, where because we don't know what's going to happen, with so much chaos going on out here. And so we rather prepare the children mentally and emotionally so that if something did happen, say the power would go down, you know, um, the parents worry about the children more than they worry about the power, because the children start crying and they can't have their games on, or they can't do this or can't do. So you want to prepare them mentally for the possibilities and some of the things that they can do. And this preparation comes out of the ideal that our reality says that it might be necessary. So therefore, whatever our reality dictates, that's what we must start planning for, organizing for, and making sure that we're able to properly deal with. That's just how it is. And if we don't, then we have to deal with the repercussions of that. And that's what we find happening inside of our community on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the reality. So
Yeah, before we go to the next question, I would not advise any Black person to not have children. Instead of making that decision, I would advise you to connect with people like Brother Kenyatta, and hopefully we put up the women's program, and you connect with us as well and all that, and we make sure as a community, as a collective, that we have at least one of these programs in every city Black people are a majority, so that that program can also have a place to care for children when parents go to work, because
yes,
we must exist in this criminal space in a healthy way, right? Even if we're not going back home, or as we prepare to go back home, we must have healthy, we cannot give into this death culture. We have to sustain our life culture. So we as a community, $100,000, y'all, if we work together, we don't even need the athlete if we work together. We don't even need the athlete if we work together. Even if we said $5 each of us a month, $5, right? So Jolly Lama, your name is not that, I am presuming. Whatever your name is, respect that, but do not take the route. And I will advise no Black person today to take the route of having no children. It is not a route we can take as the life-giving people, because part of life-giving is having the children. This question, Brother Kenyatta, what I hear you say is that we need a committed tithing system to fund our liberation, what I was just talking about. How could the broader African Black community support your organization to develop more strong Black men?
Well, yes. That's definitely a critical question because we have to do that. It's not really a question of should we or could we. You know, we must. It's critical. Um, and if we don't, the consequences will be very serious. We see what's happening in the world, and we have to prepare our young men to be able to deal with it. I had a little bit better growing up because I was able to somehow predict the future in my life. You know, I work hard, I do this, I can buy my car, I can, travel, I can, because we kind of could see things a little differently because of the circumstances. But now, our children have no clue of what's going to happen tomorrow. They go to college for one degree. When they come out, the job is no longer there. But they still have the bill of college. So it's total chaos. So we have to. We don't have any other choice. But we have to create a African-centered, organized method of educating our children. And in the case of S.T.E.P, we briefly talked about the building that we purchased, and our goal is to get that building up and running. And so that's why we want to continue to raise funds. And if we get it up and running right now, we would be able to at least increase our membership by at least 5 times immediately. And not only that, but we will be able to not only have rites of passage for young men that go from the ages of, now we start at age 6. We're not the traditional age 12, 13. We had to start young because they're being exposed to things nowadays that we just have to start them younger. But we found very quickly, after engaging in rites of passage for a while, we found that at 18, 17, 18, when they finally go off into college, from that time until, say, age 25 and even up to 30, they struggle. The boys are struggling because now it's this ideal of manhood that they're really still not fully prepared for because society is vicious. The financial aspect alone. And so, there's a rites of passage stage that we're going to have to make sure we have in place with that building to reach children from the age of 18 to 25. And I say 18 to 25 or 30 because we've ran into some 30-year-olds that's still struggling to try to understand where they want to go, what they want to do, but yet they don't have the mechanisms in place, the structure in place where they can lean on or to guide them. And sometimes the male ego, we don't want to tell people what we're going through or how much we're going through things. We want to play like we got it going on. This is where S.T.E.P comes in.
Yeah.
Because men are more comfortable to go talk to men that they know are righteous in their spirit, and that they're not going to be judgmental in regard to what they're going through.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that same building will help us entertain the female rites of passage, with bringing the sisters in to have the female rites of passage. But the other thing that we feel is critical, most critical, is that we want to create a eldership program.
Thank you. We need adult programs too. Yes.
We need everything. We need everything because our reality is what it is.
Adults, myself included, we are healing.
Yes. But see, our eldership program If we alienate those with the most life experience, the most accumulated knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and we isolate them so that they can't even come out of the house,
Mm-hmm.
so that they fear the very people who they should be nurturing, then of course the family, the community is doomed. They're doomed.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about it, these people are getting ready to be your ancestors. In traditional African culture, we pour our libation to the ancestors and ask for their guidance. The same person that you alienated, you know? We have scholars like Dr. Ben
Mm-hmm.
who left us under traumatic circumstances because of not having the funds, not having the support, you know? And so sometimes people give their entire lives and they still treat it in this Eurocentric way because of our conditioning. And so we have to reattach that. The eldership program, our plan is to make sure that we can be funded to, uh, purchase vans, have them fixed up, and go around and pick up our elders so that they can get back and forth safely on certain nights of the week. And we'll let them play some bingo and
Exactly.
get them comfortable. And then next thing you know, we will reattach them with the youth so they can talk. Because we know once they get comfortable, elders like to talk. But they have to feel comfortable. And then we can bring their children in and make sure that we once again sit at the feet of the elders. And that's so critical. That's so important. Just like they say, you can analyze a society, you can analyze a people according to how they treat their women. You can also analyze them according to how they treat their elders.
Yes.
If you disrespect your elders, then you, in fact, are setting yourself up to be disrespected by your children also. And it just carries on. And we see it. We see it out there, you know, in society. We see it. And so, yes, this is our plan to get this building up and running. If we get this building up and running, brother, sister, we will definitely uh, devote ourselves, wholly to reestablishing a concrete foundation inside of our community, and also uh, the foundation for building, because we're in Newark.
Yeah.
Newark have 5 wards. It's a very large city. It's like 5 cities combined. These
Mm-hmm.
smaller cities,
Mm-hmm.
and then right next to us we have East Orange,
Yeah.
and then we have Irvington, then we have Jersey City,
All of them
then
that
we have
need
Patterson.
all of
Yeah,
them.
all of them.
All of them.
And nobody has African-centered rites of passage,
Mm-mm.
you know,
Yeah.
and holistic on top of that. See, that's that word that,
No,
you talked about earlier.
not the ones that are being run by certain individuals that have no business running African rites of passage. But go on, brother.
Yes, yes, I agree. And it's understandable when you really look at this reality that we find ourselves in, because a lot of people believe that the only way that you can exist is if you're funded by the system.
Mhm.
And as
Yeah.
important as that funding is, if the very people who are the offspring of the oppressors and the ones who are tied into the system. Now, that's not to put all of them inside the same category, but we're talking about the others. And if they will fund your liberation, if you think that that is the way that you will exist, then that means anytime you get on their nerve, they can pull the string
Hmm.
and your program no longer exists.
Exactly.
So while we can be strategical to obtain funding wherever we see, we deserve it, we deserve reparations. But at the same time, we must figure out ways to make ourselves independent
Hmm.
so that we can be self sufficient and therefore not have anyone dictating or controlling that which we teach our children. Because as we know, the system itself don't want programs like this to exist, less known to expand, less known to duplicate. Because now we're talking about producing a whole new generation of leaders, a whole new generation, not just men, but leaders, you
Hmm.
know, a whole new generation of strong African women, leaders, you know, reattaching the eldership so that now the elders help to nurture us, you know. And so, we have to make sure that we understand these dynamics and how important they are, and that this is, in fact, the epitome of the African way. You know, we're village people.
Yes, we
We're
are.
village people, and
Innately communal
and
people.
and that's the only way.
Hmm.
That's the only way. We're not meant to be isolated. We were not meant to be people who uh, only depend on a strong family
Hmm.
in the community, because that strong family, no matter how strong they may think they are going to be affected every time they come out the door by that which is in the community that may not be strong, or that may
Exactly.
not be focused, or may not be African centered. So that means we have to also engage in the community. And sometimes you're going to have situations where a family might be in such disarray and such, at such a dysfunctional level, that your job will be to involve that family in the activities simply in order to sustain it, so you can get it to the point that it can fend for itself. That's the communal way. That's the village concept, you know? Not to say, well, you should have had this, or you should have had it together, or you should be doing this. No, no. The reality is the reality. We have all been affected.
Hmm.
And so our women, are going through a lot, you know, are going through a lot. It's hard to raise a family by yourself, even one job, especially if you're trying to work and you're trying to go to school, you're trying to do these different things. And we have a lot of women, just like a lot of men, who are trying to really do everything in their power to be, you know, an asset, to their families. But they worry every day about the well-being of their children.
Hmm.
Even if they have got them in an after-school program, they got to worry. They got to worry about everything that happens to them, and who's there and who comes in the building and what type of teachers or what type of instructors. You know,
Yeah.
that's why the African centeredness is so important. So to get back to your question, uh,
The brother.
we definitely want to make sure that we get this building up and running, because the building will allow us to expand. The building will allow us to duplicate our services, and also the building will allow us to uh, assist other organizations. This is a piece that I didn't mention, to assist other organizations who may not have either the knowledge or the curriculums, or but yet have the will to actually come in for weekend trainings, so that they could learn, what it is that we can teach our children, and how, and what other structures should be in place in order to make it.
Marriage counseling. I'm looking forward to you having, you're going to have every single of those 5 steps. No, for real. Like, we're not playing about this. It's all needed.
Yes,
It's
it's needed,
all needed.
for sure, for sure.
It's all needed.
Yeah.
So I thank you so much, my brother. As I ask you to give your last word, please let the people know. Do you already have a program you're raising funds? Can they find it on the website? Where can they find it? Where can they go if they want to contribute? And then give your last words.
Well, yes, yes. The focus for us is, once again, getting our building up and running, because the expanding of what we do and the continuation of what we do already is predicated upon us getting this building up and running. And once again, we're about 75% finished with the building, uh, 70%, and they can, anyone who wants to give a donation or to assist us, can go to our website, and that's at step to the future. That's STEP to the future.org. Step to the future.org, and that will take you directly to our website, and you can go to the top where it says uh, how you can help, or either you can scroll down in the middle of the page, the first page, and you'll see links to the building fund and how you can assist in regard to the development of that building. And we will definitely continue to keep, um, the community aware of our progress as we move forward, and the grand opening, of that facility, and some of the work that's being done as
Ashe.
we move forward.
Ashe.
I say.
Any last words, brother? I want to say thank you to you, and thank you to everyone who was listening. Remember to subscribe and share, share, share. The more you subscribe, the more the videos go, like, they get distributed, right? Because If you're not watching, if you're not subscribing, if you're not sharing, they already, despite that, even when you're doing that, they're already trying to shut down channels like ours. So the more you share, the more you subscribe, the more you like, the less effective their tactics can be. So go ahead and do that. And then also share about S.T.E.P. Next time you meet someone who's talking about my kid, oh, there's a program in Newark, S.T.E.P. We're trying to raise funds. Why don't you contribute there so that it's big enough for your kid to go there? That's how we're going to be talking, intentional in our conversations. This boy, this boy, this boy. Oh, there's a program in Newark, S.T.E.P, Rites of Passage and Manhood, preparation for manhood. They are raising funds. They want to expand so that they can serve more boys. Why don't we organize and let's get with it, people? And then, as Brother Kenyatta was saying, and this is something that I want to say right now again before Brother Kenyatta gives us his last words. Um, I'm one who understands clearly, and we all understand clearly, that the political system of this criminal enterprise does not help us. But when we have our people in it and people like us who are warriors, it provides us room to survive, to live, to exist in our communities. And specifically, the local political system is where we're focused on. The local place that affects what type of buildings are built in our community, what type of houses, the rent price. Is there a liquor store? Are there fried chicken, 60 fried chickens in one block and no vegan restaurant? All that nonsense, those local politics, those local spaces where we need people like us, myself and Kenyatta in those spaces. Myself and Kenyatta already have a job, but people like us need to take those positions. So we want councilmen, council women like myself and Kenyatta. We cannot just support men, Black men, to get into these offices, Black women as well, because we understand there needs to be balance. When there are meetings, we want to hear the female voice and the male voice to bring balance to the community. So let's be intentional. Brother Kamal, I'll be seeing you. We will be talking. There's a few councilmen who came to me. I'll explain why, but we need grounded people to run for those offices, and we'll come and support and organize the way we need to organize locally. Brother Kamal, last words. Kenyatta, what? See, I keep saying Kenyatta.
Yeah, I kept hearing that.
Kikuyu, Brother Kenyatta, and maybe go sit and listen. I don't know what the ancestors are saying. I have
Ah,
no idea what the answer. I'll talk to you when I see you personally. I'll talk to you what
yes,
they might
yes,
be
yes.
saying. Go on,
I understand. I understand.
go on.
Um, there's an African saying, a proverb, that if we do not initiate the youth into the village, then they will burn it down just to feel the warmth. Look around. Look at what we see in the urban communities, in the predominantly black areas, in most of our cities. We see the same problems existing all around the country, but we're talking about our people. And it starts off in many cases with a lack of self knowledge, the dysfunctional home environment, the chaos inside the schools, and also a constant bombardment, a constant bombardment of misinformation and indoctrination through media. And so and then, of course, the diet, the diet. The diet is critical. And thank God we teach the children about food selection. Um, but most of our children are growing up on fast food or either Uber Eats, which is the same thing. And the adults, because of just trying to survive, a lot of times they allow these things to babysit them. You know, I don't have to cook, get some Uber Eats. I don't have to babysit you, get on your phone and on the computer. And so we're raising children who are these children that we're talking about, these ones who will burn it down. They do that in many ways. Our elders can't come outside, they're burning it down. They shoot a young man in the back for his backpack or his shirt or his sneakers. They're burning it down. They disrespect our women. Our women can't even walk down the street without, holding their heads down because they don't want to make eye contact. They're burning it down. And so everything that we see taking place inside of our communities that's dysfunctional is what that proverb is talking about. And that's why it's so important for us to take full control. We have to take full control of the educational process. We have to take full control. There is no other way. And we know that it's hard. We know that it's a challenge, and particularly for individual families. But that's the reason why we must support organizations who are out here doing the work. And it's also why we must start to collaborate with groups and organizations that are out here that we can gain support from, because we know it's hard for families to make it in this day and time. And it's getting ready to get harder. It's getting ready to get real hard if things keep going the way they're going, because we haven't even seen the true effects of what's happening in what they call the Middle East and the Strait of Hormuz, and the lack of oil moving, and uh, prices going up, and how that's going to end up inside of the kitchen tables across America. We haven't seen that yet. Uh, this little bit of gas hiking that we've seen is not even because of what happened. It's because of the reaction to it. And so it hasn't trickled down truly yet. But when it does, then it's going to be 10 times harder for each one of us. So the communal way in trying to establish your collective, do it now. Don't wait till it's too late. Do it now. Find the organizations inside of your area. Find the African-centered groups. Find the educational institutions. Find the teachers. Find the individuals who are serious about that which is in the best interest of the family and the community. Find them. They're out there. You got to go to the right places. Get out of the clubs, get out of the nonsense, and collaborate. Go online. A lot of us are online. You know, STEP has a page uh, on Facebook. We have a page on Instagram, and we also have a website, which also has other organizations. If you go through the website, in the back, you'll see a list of books that our children should be reading, and you'll also see other organizations that they could also participate in. We want to increase that list, so if anyone knows of progressive, African-centered, or beneficial organizations inside of the Black community, and particularly in the Newark area, please send them to us so we can put their information also on our website. But that's what I would leave you with. Um, you know, let's stop the burning, because if we don't organize in every way, politically, economically, educationally, dietarily, if we don't organize and start doing what we know is in the best interest of our people, then it's going to continue to be a downhill spiral for us, you know. So with that, I leave you. I thank you for inviting me to come on and share our knowledge and our information and our own perspective of what rites of passage is, and also what it can be, in this time and for our people. So we thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Kenyatta. And I was going to let those be the last words, but I'll be remiss if I don't mention this, which I believe is connected to the work that Brother Kenyatta is doing. Um, on May, I believe it's May 14th. I'm forgetting the date exactly, what date it is. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
sharing the website now for all of you to see. There's the Essex County African Studies Department is celebrating 25 years of their existence. And like Kenyatta's program, they too have things that they do. Actually, I've seen the young men that Kenyatta works with go to some of the events at with Dr. Kalfani and them.
Yeah.
So those of you who are looking to go for an evening where you sit with people like me and we talk and we discuss these things face to face, but our ticket that we buy for the event helps raise money to sustain that program and what they do, including the African Spirituality Conference that they have every spring, please reach out to me. Reach out to me, kumbukeni1 at gmail.com, KUMBUKENI 1 at gmail.com. Reach out to me on the comments of this broadcast. Reach out to me on both this gala and how you can connect to Brother Kenyatta and what he does. And we can continue doing the community work. All right. Brother Kenyatta, I thank you very much. Wait for me 1 minute. We're going to play the outro To everyone who has supported us when we have shows, when we don't have shows, when I'm talking to you all with the sternness that is needed, when I don't entertain the emotional fragility that we all have, when I'm perfect, when I'm not perfect, throughout all my phases since we started Kumbukeni, I thank you all. Asanteni sana. Continue supporting us, continue sharing, subscribe. Let's let this grow and let's inspire people to return to who we are. Asanteni, kwaherini. Peace.
All right, peace.